Olivia? Olivia? Mr. Scorsese, I believe. Olivia? We give him some Paul. Paul, guys. Paul! Paul! Come back this side, Paul! The ball. Olivia?
Well, we'll see. You know what I mean? He was a good friend of mine. We had a lot of good times together, and I'm hoping to have one now.
And why did he say so?
He was a really good friend. That's my memory. Besides the musician and the Beatle and the guy who loved racing cars and loved gardens, you know, he was a good friend of mine.
Yeah, are you hoping that the film will, you know, will it jog a lot of memories from?
I'm sure it will. If he's in it, it will. You know.
What do you think of the idea of Mr. Scorsese doing this?
Well, Marty, you can't doubt, can you? I mean, you can't doubt Marty, for God's sake. You know, if he'd been a bit taller, he'd have been an actor.
What do you think George would have made of all this tonight? What do you think George would have made of Martin?
Oh, I think he would have loved it.
What was his unique contribution to the Beatles, George Harrison?
I think his guitar, you remember his guitar and his later on his songwriting.
How
Really exciting because I haven't seen the frame. I know I'm in it, but I still haven't seen the frame. I don't know, it's a surprise, isn't it? I knew the man, so...
What did George Harrison do for the world of music?
Well, I think besides his incredible guitar and his writing, he introduced many people to Indian music.
BBC.
Yoko, you knew George Harrison. What was he like? He was known as the quiet Beatle. Is that true?
He was a genius. He was a genius in his own right. And I'm very glad and very happy that Martin's making this.
You were married to a Beatle. What were the challenges of being married to a man in the biggest band in the world?
Well, it's not very easy, and I know exactly what Olivia is going through. But she's doing a very good job, I think.
And how remembered in, say, 10 years' time?
I think, of course, the Beatles are going to be remembered. But each individual being remembered this way is very nice.
Because George was always the
gives
quiet
depth,
one.
you know, it gives a depth to the group. You know.
Because George was always the quiet one. He was sort of overlooked. Do you hope that this will kind of change history in some ways?
Of course, you know, because he was, I think, very attractive, handsome person, and very, very talented. And of course, the elders, you know, Paul and John, obviously noticed that, and that's why he got away with it. I mean, he was always there. I don't know how he did it when he was so young, younger than them, you know.
Thank you very much.
The dog was called Mick the Miller. Mick the Miller, famous dog.
I'm very fortunate to be able to have Marty. Again, mutual friends, and Marty's love of music and the themes he makes movies about.
Tiny role of George Harrison. It's difficult for me to see because I'm an American, and of course I remember I heard the first time Beatles song was played in America on the radio that morning. I think it was Bruce Morrow or something in New York. I Want to Hold Your Hand. So I remember I was going to New York University at the time, and so we sort of grew with the group, and then the group as individuals, and that sort of thing. So. I got to tell you, I never really was that interested in the personal interrelationships, because it's always how the work reflects the personal. I found that the more you get to know, I found also with filmmakers, you get to know certain filmmakers, it's better knowing them through their work, you know.
Well, you had this amazing.
Well, I'm not sure if I jumped to it, only because it's daunting and kind of it is daunting is the word for many different reasons, obviously. The work of George, with the Beatles, the nature of the Beatles and their presence and their position in the music world of the 20th century and culture. The other groups that I've worked with, whose music is as important and as strong. All of this balancing, I'm wondering what could I find? Where's my inroad here? And it took me a while to begin to understand, of course, how I knew what the inroad was right away, and that is the themes that George lived in his music and in his life. So that was the idea. Well, how do I express that in this film? How do I do that without sounding, I don't know, preachy or tried to convince anyone of anything? We just had to find an honest way of presenting him. And of course, don't forget, we weren't able to interview him, so we had to make it up of old interviews. And it's difficult when you do that because, you know, you may have a great line of dialogue from one interview and he's got a beard and mustache, and you cut to another one and he hasn't, and you say, who was the other guy? You know, so it's that kind of literal. So we had to really go very slowly on this, very slowly.
And do yeah, because then when they're there, we know there's 1 minute.
Okay.
You know, for years, Harrison's music is really what the key is for me. I mean, for years, his music seemed to be dealing with themes that I connected with over, I don't know, the past 35, 40 years of my making movies. The same themes, really, or similar. And at least I found comfort in them and a kind of hope and a special experience listening to his music. So I was fascinated by him, really.
And Olivia Harrison.
Well, this was the amazing part of this whole thing. This was the opportunity because the archive was eventually opened.
Eventually given. We did. We really wanted to make this documentary. It was just hard to part with all the elements. They finally convinced me it was okay.
You know,
how did you convince her?
Well, I kept asking my editor, David Tedeschi, so where's that picture that she had? And Olivia had that. I said, well, she gave it to us. Well, not really. So I said, could we get it, please?
So you were allowed access. What did you find out about him that you didn't know because you were allowed into that access?
Well, I think, you know, it's a film in 2 parts, and it's about 3.5 hours. I mean, there's a lot in there I think I'd rather explore it in the movie for you to discover for yourself what you didn't know, what you think you know about people through their work. It's quite fascinating.
You were making this as you were making Shutter Island at the same time. It was difficult to be hands-on.
I was making Shutter Island, also Hugo Cabret, which is be opening next month here. They tell me. Hands-on through David Tedeschi, my editor, and Margaret Bodie, my producer, and Nigel, and he would direct me into the editing room when I had the time, every couple of weeks, every week and a half. And don't forget, this is a long. It took about 5 years to pull together. And one of the best things about this was really taking that time. I mean, yes, I was joke about, well, there was no release date, there was no delivery date, but in a sense there is. You have to get it done as soon as you can. But still, we had the ability to take our time and really let it sink in. So if I had to go off and shoot something, David would fly to location. For a weekend, we'd work for a weekend or 2 or 3 days, we'd work on the George Harrison film, go back, he'd send back cuts, all of this sort of thing. So it was a real living process in a way, and there was I didn't feel a sense of rush to push us into anything. So
why now, and why with Mr. Scorsese?
Well, I was asked right soon after George died to make a film about his life, and it wasn't appropriate timing. But through mutual friends and very organically, and through the supportive nature, the force of nature, we were guided together. And Marty has such a great love of music. You know, I'm very fortunate to have him. Great storyteller.
Well, for me, I think the importance in life, keeping an open mind. Keeping an open mind in life about everything. That's now, what could be after, or what came before, in a sense. That's all. Really keeping an open mind. And accepting the beliefs and others, values of other cultures, and maybe not maybe not subscribing to them, but accepting it, and maybe learning from each other.
Well, I think that that maybe not always to look outside for the answer. That when he couldn't find an answer, he took an inward journey, and I think that's where he found a lot of his own answers. I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was definitely an opening up for me, but I trust Marty more now. and the production crew and the people he works with are just so incredible and so respectful, and really the story he's looking for is the essence of George.
Yeah.
That was the most important
That was the idea.
thing.
Yeah.
That was really it, the inner person.
Yeah.
And that was really that was the challenge. That was
the big challenge. That was the challenge. But you see, that's the thing too. I don't want to take any. I wanted to get beyond all the what you say expectations were, or old stories, or what we think we know of a group of people that were so powerfully bound together. We have actually no right to even think that. You see, what we can judge from is the result. We can judge maybe the artistic merit, the result. And then what that means, what the work means, the spiritual nature of the work, all of it, I think that's, and I wanted to get above all that and beyond anything we think we may know in America or here in England even. Maybe I had that, I also may have had the advantage of being American. Of not being here, not being here as it was happening, you see,
Mr. Scorsese, I believe. Come on, give me a bit of that. Love it. Great. See, I've got the shades moving.
Let's get a 4.
Not very quiet at all. He was a lovely boy, as the film shows. He could be quiet, but he could be loud too, depending on what mood he was in. But he was a great man.
What did he bring to the band that we might find out today that we didn't before?
Great music, great writing, great guitar playing. He's a all-round good boy.